So here are the top 10 official reasons from the DVSA published in 2024 for failing the driving test in Great Britain. And later on in the video, I'm going to compare them with the top 10 reasons from 2021 to see if anything has changed. And I'm starting with number 10, the 10th most common reason for failing the driving test in Great Britain. And that is use of speed. That's the box they tick when you're going too fast for either the speed limit or the conditions. So of course you can fail the driving test for driving over the speed limit, but you can also fail for not slowing down in time for a speed limit change. At the moment this road has a speed limit of 40 miles per hour, but around this bend there's a sign saying it's going to be 30. I can see it now, and therefore I must slow down to no more than 30 by the time I pass that sign. If I was to still be above 30 miles an hour when I pass this sign, then that can be a fault on the driving test. Whether or not it's a serious fault or a minor fault depends on how much you're over the speed limit by and for how long. But you can still fail the driving test for going too fast even if you're within the speed limit, and that's because you could be too fast for the conditions. For example, you may be driving at a speed that's too fast to stop within the distance you can see to be clear, or too fast for the current weather conditions or visibility. Or you may be too fast for how close you are to parked cars, how close you are to the curb, or how close you are to pedestrians. If during the driving test your examiner feels your speed is unsafe, then it's unlikely you're going to pass. Number 9, the 9th most common reason for failing the driving test in Great Britain is position normal driving. That's the box they tick when your position isn't right when you're driving. For example, you could be too close to the curb, too close to the middle of the road, or you're on a dual carriageway and you're staying in the right lane when you're not overtaking. You can also get a fault for position normal driving if you straight line a roundabout, even if the roundabout doesn't have road markings. If the roundabout is wide enough for two vehicles, then you should treat it like it is for two vehicles. For example, here I'm going ahead, second exit here, and I should use the left lane for going ahead according to the highway code. So I'm starting to the left, and I should stay left as I go ahead here. I should keep it to the left, leave room for vehicle to my right, then signal and leave at this exit. So I'm going to do this roundabout again, but this time I'm going to straight line it to show you what I mean. So I'm going ahead, second exit, I'm to the left, and I go straight across into the right lane and then back to the left as I leave. Now this isn't automatically a driving test fail, but if you were to do it without consideration to other road users around you, then it could easily be a fail. When I did it that time, I was keeping my eye on this BMW to make sure they weren't coming up alongside, to make sure it was safe. The 8th most common reason for failing the driving test is not responding to road markings. On the driving test report form, that would come under response to signs/signals, road markings. Examples of how you could get this fault would be if you're in a lane with an arrow that says left only, so you have to go left in that lane, and you try to turn right. You're not responding to the road marking. Or you stop in a yellow box junction. Again, a yellow box junction is a road marking, and if you stop in it, you're not responding to that road marking. Or you get to a mini roundabout, there's space to go around the mini roundabout, but instead of going around it, you go over it. The 7th most common reason for failing the driving test is not responding to traffic signs correctly. On your driving test report form, this would come under response to signs/signals, traffic signs. And it's very similar to the 8th most common reason. The 8th most common reason is road markings, not responding to road markings, which are essentially traffic signs painted on the road. And the 7th most common reason is not responding to traffic signs on signposts. So there's no surprise that these two problems are in a similar place on the list because they are similar issues. Examples would be approaching a roundabout where there's a clear sign saying the left lane is for turning left only, but you try to go ahead or right in that left lane. Or you don't bring the car to a complete stop at a stop sign. You slow down, you check it's safe to go, you go safely, but you don't bring the car to a complete stop. or you ignore a no entry sign and you try to go into that road anyway, or you're driving in a bus lane during the hours of its operation when there's a clear sign telling you what the hours of operation are. This is where it can be difficult for driving examiners to know which box to tick on the driving test report form, and even more difficult for me because I'm a driving instructor. I haven't had driving examiner training. The training for instructors and examiners is very different. All I've got to go by is what I've seen examiners do on real tests and the guidance for how examiners should mark the driving test. But earlier on I said you could be marked for use of speed on the driving test. Use of speed essentially means too fast. You can be marked for use of speed if you don't slow down in time for a speed limit change when the speed limit is reducing. But you could also be marked for response to traffic signs for doing that exact same fault. And that's not my opinion. Before you say you're wrong, it's one or the other. That's from the Gov website. The examples I'm giving you in this video are from the Gov website, and their examples include not slowing down in time for a speed limit change as being marked as use of speed or response to traffic signs. The 6th most common cause of failing the driving test is steering. On the driving test report form, this comes under control steering. Now what you may be thinking is this means not keeping your hands at 10 to 2 on the wheel, or steering with one hand, or crossing your arms when you're steering, or dry steering like I'm doing now. But actually these things don't really concern the examiners. The examiners are concerned with your ability to use the steering to maintain a good position. You will likely get marked down for steering if you steer too early, too late, too little, or too much. Now yes, crossing your arms may mean you steer poorly because you cross your arms, pause because you run out of travel, have to reposition your arms and then turn more, and that may make you lose your position and therefore you would get marked down for steering. But if you're crossing your arms and maintaining a good position, then it should be fine. It's your ability to use the steering to maintain a good position that counts. Also, if you were to mount the curb during the driving test, that would usually be marked as controlled steering, although in my opinion that's usually a judgment issue, not a steering issue. The 5th most common reason for failing the driving test is not responding to traffic lights appropriately. On the driving test report form, this will be marked under response to signs / signals traffic lights. This one is fairly straightforward. You'd get marked down for this if you don't stop at a red light, or you don't stop at an amber light when it's safe to do so, or you don't stop at the advanced stop line when it's safe to do so, or you don't go when it's green, or you don't go into the middle of the junction when it's green, when your exit road is clear but you're going to have to wait in the middle due to oncoming traffic. And another common example is stopping at secondary traffic lights. If you want to know what they are, I'll leave a link to a video up there. The 4th most common reason for failing the driving test is an incorrect position when turning right at a junction. This will be marked on the driving test report form as junctions turning right. Now you're usually going to get marked down for this if you don't go into the ghost island when you're turning right. If you don't know what a ghost island is, well this is a ghost island. If you didn't enter that and you were to obstruct traffic, then that could be marked down on the driving test. Or if you were turning right at the end of the road but you positioned your vehicle to the left, which would be misleading to other road users. But you could also get marked down for this if you were to use the left lane to go around the roundabout, if you're turning right at the roundabout in the left lane, but there was no road signs or markings. Earlier I said you could get marked down for response to traffic signs for doing this, or response to road markings for doing this. But if there's no road markings and no traffic signs, you can still be marked down for turning right in the left lane of a roundabout when there's no signs or road markings to say you can do so. The 3rd most common reason for failing the driving test is not moving off safely. On the driving test report form, this is marked under moving off safety. Now what they mean by this is when you're parked at the side of the road and you want to get moving, or if you have finished the emergency stop and you want to get moving again. That's what they mean by moving off. Some people say moving away. Now you can be marked down for this if you go to get moving without making adequate observations beforehand to make sure it's safe. Or if when you get moving, you force another vehicle to take evasive action for you. They may have to brake or have to steer because you've moved off when it's not safe to do so. Now this is not just for cars behind, this is also for cars ahead, because if you're having to move around a parked vehicle into the other side of the road, you need to also consider oncoming traffic and how you are going to affect them. Or if there's just lack of space and oncoming traffic is already passing parked cars on their side of the road, you need to consider this also. The second most common reason for failing the driving test in Great Britain is not checking mirrors correctly when changing direction. On the driving test report form, this is marked under mirrors, change direction. This would happen if you were to change lane without checking it safe by checking your mirrors first, or if you were to try and change lane when there was a vehicle already next to you, or if you were to change lane in front of an approaching vehicle, forcing them to brake. This can happen anywhere where there's multiple lanes, dual carriageways and roundabouts, for example. Or if you're in the right lane of a roundabout and you want to leave the roundabout, you need to move across the left lane to leave. So it's important you check your centre and left mirror first before you do so to make sure it's safe. But also it can happen when you're not changing lane. You're simply changing your position in the road. You're driving down the road, there's a parked vehicle, you position yourself to the right to pass the parked vehicle, but you don't check your mirrors first, and there is a vehicle trying to overtake you, such as a motorbike. Well, this would be unsafe and therefore very likely a driving test fail. The number one most common reason for failing the driving test, and it seems to be number one each year, and that is not making effective observations at junctions. On the driving test report form, this is marked as junctions observations. Now you can be marked down for this for simply misjudging the speed of approaching traffic. You can see approaching traffic, think you've got time to pull out, but you pull out and make them brake. But also you could be marked down for this for not noticing you need to give way or noticing too late. This often happens at crossroads where you have the give way line at the crossroads, but you don't realise and you either give way too late or you sail straight across the crossroads. And it can also happen if you can't see very far at the junction because it's closed, but you don't try to improve your view. You just look, you can't see very far, so you just pull out and get going and hope for the best. If you can't see, it's better to peep and creep forward slightly to try and improve your view to see if it's safe. So let's compare the top 10 from 2021 to 2024. Here are both lists. Now, what in the top 10 of 2021 didn't make it to 2024? Well, it's move off control and reverse park control, and this is not a surprise for me because in 2021 approximately 11% of test passes were automatic, and in 2024 21% of test passes were automatic. So more people are learning in automatics now, although the vast majority is still manual in Great Britain. And it's kind of hard to get move off control wrong when you're in an automatic. However, you could still fail the test for reverse park control if you didn't park properly. For example, if you were to park over the line in a car park, that actually gets marked as reverse park control. But you still may be marked for reverse park control if you didn't control the speed of the vehicle very well, which is why if you're in an automatic, it's less likely you're going to get this fault. And cars these days are more likely to have cameras and sensors, making parking easier. Now let's see what's new for 2024. Well, it's road markings and use of speed. In my opinion, road markings just keep getting worse and worse. However, examiners should only mark this fault if the road marking was clear, and use of speed. So in 2024, more people are speeding on their driving test than they were in 2021. What has improved is control steering. That's no longer in the top 3. That's made its way down to 6, and I think that's because less instructors are forcing that push-pull method. They're allowing pupils to develop their own steering technique, and in my experience, having tried to teach both, I find just letting pupils figure out their own steering method is usually more successful. The top 4 have barely changed though. 3 of the top 4 are in the exact same place: junctions observation, use of mirrors change direction, and junctions turning right. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you, because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy. And that takes away a big stress from the owner of that car that you're using to practice your driving in. Via the link at the moment, there's up to 35% off and a £20 gift card. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to confused.com, because you fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest, and you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like without having to do the whole quote again. Just change the car and recalculate. It's a quick and easy way to compare how much it costs to insure different cars. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel, so thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.